immortal holy man of Russia, poisoned, shot, and strangled, but still alive.
The Trail of the Holy Man from Siberia, the beginning of a power that defies explanation. The big question: how could a simple peasant from Siberia rise to become the most powerful and most feared figure in the heart of the Russian Empire? And is it true that Grigory Rasputin could not die? The story traces his spiritual roots, his influence at the Tsar's court, and the mysterious night of his death. Was Rasputin really human, or something else? Imagine, in the frozen plains of Siberia, where snow falls relentlessly, a village boy was born who would later be called the holy man who could not die. But the question remains, was Grigory Rasputin truly chosen by God? Or was he just an ordinary man who knew how to manipulate light and perception to make it seem miraculous? Pokrovskaya, a remote village in Tyumen, western Siberia, a place where life moved slowly and the long nights felt endless. It was here, in 1869, that a thin boy with piercing eyes was born, Grigory Yefimovich Rasputin. Villagers said that even as a child, his eyes were different. They would whisper, "His gaze, it can see the sins we hide." Rasputin grew up among people who believed in spirits and the power of nature. Siberia still held remnants of ancient traditions, healers, spirit rituals, and stories of holy men who could speak to the heavens. And Rasputin seemed to absorb it all. He often disappeared into the forest for days, meditating among the pine trees. He claimed to come to listen to God's whispers. Some villagers claimed they saw him praying while his body trembled, and the air around him felt warm. Even a monk from Tobolsk once wrote, "When he prayed, we saw as if a warm mist rose from his body. We did not know if it was a miracle or something else." Rasputin never had formal religious education, yet strangely, he had a powerful spiritual presence. People came to him for prayers, for healing, and slowly his reputation spread from the village to small monasteries across Siberia. Some monks rejected him, calling him a heretic, but many believed he was a chosen man. The question arose, how could an illiterate peasant with no theological training make people kneel and weep just with his gaze? Was this divine charisma or an early form of psychological influence he would later use in the Russian court? One night, according to Pokrovsky folklore, Rasputin claimed to have received a divine vision. He saw a great light in the sky and heard a voice say, "Go, Grigory, the world is waiting for someone like you." From that night, his life changed. He left his village, leaving behind his wife and children, to become a wandering pilgrim, traveling from monastery to monastery, spreading prayers and healings that he claimed came from God. Yet behind the holy tales, there was another side. At every place he visited, there were always odd reports. Women who claimed to be healed, but later felt deceived, and priests who suspected he brought dangerous teachings. Let's pause and think rationally. Could Rasputin really have supernatural powers? Some modern researchers suggest that the warm aura seen by monks may have been a mass suggestion phenomenon caused by candlelight and exhaustion after long hours of prayer in enclosed spaces. Yet, medical records from later palace doctors admit that Rasputin had an extraordinary psychosomatic effect. He could calm the sick simply by speaking. So, was this a natural form of hypnosis, or proof that belief itself can create power beyond scientific explanation? One thing is clear. From the remote village of Pokrovskoye, a man was born who would change the course of the Russian Empire forever. the peasant boy would walk thousands of miles until finally sitting beside the Tsar and Tsarina's throne. But before he became the holy man of the court, one question still hung in the air. Who really was Rasputin? A messenger of God or a demon disguised as a healer? Rasputin and the secret Klisti sect, sin as a path to heaven? To understand Rasputin, we must dare to explore the darkness behind the light. For behind the prayers and miracles he performed lay a secret sect that believed sin is the path to salvation. The question is, did Rasputin's spiritual power come from faith or from darkness itself? After leaving Pokrovskoye, Rasputin wandered through forests, monasteries, and remote villages in central Russia. He became a pilgrim, sleeping in stables, living off the charity of monks and peasants he met along the way. At every stop, he spoke of repentance, of how humans must die in sin to be born anew in spirit. His words sounded like Christian teachings, but with a darker, more extreme tone. Russian historical archives record a group that resembled Rasputin's teachings, a secret sect called the Klisti, meaning those who whip themselves for God. The Klisti believed the body was a prison for the soul. To free the soul, sin had to be experienced and purified through physical suffering. They held secret rituals in basements and hidden barns. Prayers echoed in darkness, songs without music, and lashes striking the skin until blood flowed, as a sign of redemption. Some records note that after the flogging, they would dance in a circle, entering a state of spiritual ecstasy, as if they were becoming one with God. Was Rasputin truly part of the Klisti? Historical records never give a definitive answer. Yet, secret police reports from 1903 to 1905 mention Grigory Yefimovich multiple times in investigations into the Klisti sect around Tobolsk. One report in the Russian State Archives states, a pilgrim from Pokrovskoye, known for his spiritual influence, attended a nighttime meeting where followers practiced sin as a form of purification. When asked directly, Rasputin denied any involvement. He said, "I know them, but I am not part of them. I came to heal, not to dance in sin." Yet witnesses claimed that after the meeting, Rasputin seemed transformed, calmer, more confident, and spiritually stronger. So, was Rasputin truly a Klisti member? Or did he simply absorb their teachings as spiritual fuel? Some historians believe Rasputin never fully followed the sect, but was inspired by their principle that suffering, even sin, could lead to enlightenment. Others argue that Rasputin used this philosophy to justify his own behavior, becoming a sinful saint, mixing prayer with actions that defied moral norms. And here lies the mystery. How can someone be considered holy if the path to God is built on sin? After this period, Rasputin's transformation was clear. He was no longer a hesitant pilgrim, but a man with unshakable belief that God spoke through him. He began preaching to small groups, guiding noblewomen in healing prayers, often held behind closed doors, and frequently ending in rumors that shocked the Russian church. Ironically, the more he was suspected, the more his spiritual influence grew. For some, Rasputin was no longer human. He was a medium between heaven and earth. And this is where everything begins to change. Rasputin's name slowly entered the royal circles, whispered among the grand walls of St. Petersburg, as the holy man from Siberia who could heal both sickness and sin. But those who knew him from the beginning understood that behind his cloak of prayer, there remained shadows of secret rituals and perhaps something far darker. Was Rasputin bringing light or carrying darkness into the heart of the Russian Empire? Rasputin miracle amid blood when a mystic saved the heir to the throne. They called him a holy man, but behind his prayers, whispers of the devil echoed from the Siberian forests. How could a peasant from a remote village enter the heart of the Russian Empire and touch the hands of the Tsar and Tsarina themselves? The answer begins with blood, the blood of a fragile little prince who was close to death. In 1904, the heir to the Russian throne was born. Prince Alexei Nikolaevich Romanov, the only son of Tsar Nicholas II and Tsarina Alexandra. But the joy quickly turned into endless worry. Alexei was born with a terrifying illness, hemophilia, a genetic disorder that prevented his blood from clotting. This meant a small cut could be fatal. A simple bruise could make him scream for days in agony. The Tsarina, who adored her son, was nearly driven to madness by constant fear. Every time Alexei fell or bumped himself, the entire palace became a battlefield between prayer and panic. In 1906, amid the Tsarina's desperation, a man appeared, clad in simple robes, with eyes that seemed to glow in the dark. Grigory Yefimovich Rasputin. He was introduced to the royal family by a noble woman who believed that Rasputin possessed the gift of healing from God. At first, the Tsar and the court doctors were skeptical. How could a Siberian peasant know more than palace physicians? But the Tsarina believed. She said, "There is something in his gaze, something that makes me feel God is listening." And that belief would change everything. One night, Alexei was hurt again. A small cut on his thigh caused heavy bleeding. The palace doctors panicked. The blood would not stop, and the young prince's pulse weakened. In desperation, the Tsarina wrote to Rasputin, "My son is dying. If you truly are God's messenger, save him." Rasputin replied with a short message, "Do not let the doctors touch him. Let him rest. God will hear my prayers tonight." That night, Rasputin prayed from afar in his St. Petersburg home. By the next morning, Alexei's bleeding had stopped. His fever subsided, and he slowly opened his eyes. In Tsarina Alexandra's personal notes, she wrote, "After Rasputin prayed, the bleeding stopped. No doctor could explain why." For the palace, it was a miracle. For modern researchers, it raises serious questions. Some medical historians suggest Rasputin may have unconsciously saved Alexei, not through prayer, but through the calm presence he brought. Rasputin had instructed the doctors not to intervene aggressively. At the time, doctors often gave aspirin to relieve pain, which actually thinned the blood and worsened hemophilia. By calming the Tsarina and halting medical interference, Rasputin indirectly saved the young prince's life. Yet some events remain unexplained. Several times afterward, when Alexei's condition worsened, each time Rasputin came, whether praying or merely speaking, the bleeding would stop. Coincidence? Suggestion? Or something beyond human understanding? From that night on, Tsarina Alexandra was convinced Rasputin was God's messenger. She called him our friend, the holy man. Even when the court gossiped, even when nobles looked at him with disdain, the Tsarina held firm. As long as Grigory prays for Alexei, no harm can touch us. This trust gradually grew into dependence. Rasputin gained special access, royal letters, secret meetings, even minor political decisions passed through him before reaching the Tsarina. Unwittingly, the healing prayers had opened the door to the greatest power in Russia. Yet, beyond the palace walls, Rasputin became a figure of controversy. Nobles called him a fraud. Priests accused him of sin worship, and whispers spread among the people. The empire is no longer ruled by the Tsar, but by a Siberian mystic. Rasputin's power grew, not just in prayer, but in politics, money, and secrets he controlled. And from here, the sacred story began to turn into a tragedy. Was Rasputin truly the savior of the Romanov family, or a sorcerer slowly ensnaring the Russian throne with prayer and sin? The dark shadow behind the throne, when prayer becomes a weapon of power. Behind the marble walls of Tsarskoye Selo, where crystal chandeliers glitter above the heads of nobles, one name whispered fear into generals and ministers alike: Rasputin. They called him the devil in a priest's robe, the man from Siberia who conquered the greatest empire in the world with nothing but prayer, a penetrating gaze, and secrets no one dared reveal. After the blood miracle that saved Prince Alexei, Rasputin's position in Tsarina Alexandra's heart changed from gratitude to absolute conviction. He was no longer just a spiritual visitor, but a personal advisor, called upon to pray, give counsel, and even calm the Empress's emotions when political tensions rose. The Tsarina called him a holy friend sent by God. She believed that every word he spoke was the divine voice guiding Russia. But for the nobles and palace officials, this was the beginning of a nightmare. Year after year, rumors of Rasputin's power became unstoppable. It was said that the Tsarina would not make important decisions without first seeking his advice. Some secret palace reports even claimed that the names of high-ranking officials and bishops were changed simply because the holy man deemed them unworthy. One general wrote in a personal letter, "We, the soldiers, die on the battlefield, while the fate of the nation is decided by the prayers of a Siberian peasant." The people began to whisper, "The Tsar rules Russia, but Rasputin rules the Tsarina." Concerns about Rasputin even crossed Russia's borders. In British diplomatic archives, official reports describe Rasputin as the greatest threat to the stability of the Russian Empire. British diplomats portrayed him as having extraordinary influence over the Tsarina's political and military decisions, especially when the Tsar Nicholas II went to the front during World War I. Indeed, while the Tsar fought abroad, Rasputin nearly became the shadow ruler of the palace. He decided who would be appointed or removed from ministerial posts, who would be accepted or excluded from circles of power. Behind prayers and gentle words, Rasputin slowly built a network of influence, an invisible kingdom rooted in the Tsarina's heart, yet shaking the very foundation of the Russian monarchy. But how much power did Rasputin truly wield? Did he really control the Tsarina, or was he merely a scapegoat for nobles afraid of losing influence? Modern historians have uncovered a curious fact. Not all accusations against Rasputin were true. Many were reinforced by anti-monarchy propaganda, newspapers and pamphlets aimed at undermining the Romanov family. Yet, on the other hand, the Tsarina's personal notes show an extraordinary level of emotional dependence. She wrote, "Without Grigory, I do not know what to do. He is our strength, our prayer, and our hope." So while his political influence may have been exaggerated, his psychological influence, real, profound, and dangerous, was undeniable. Outside the palace walls, hatred for Rasputin grew like fire beneath ice. The nobles felt their honor insulted. The church believed its teachings were corrupted. And the people began to lose faith in a czar controlled by a sorcerer. Nicknames appeared: the Holy Devil, Mad Monk, the Devil of Pokrovsky. Satirical posters depicted Rasputin dancing atop the throne while the Tsarina knelt beneath him. And behind all the mockery, plans for his assassination began to take shape. When the empire falls, one name will remain standing among the ruins: Rasputin. But power born from mystery always demands a price. For Rasputin, prayer was no longer merely worship. Prayer had become a weapon, a tool to bend hearts and shake thrones. But how long can a man stand between God and power before both consume him alive? How many times can a man die before death truly claims him? Poison, bullets, frozen water. And on a snow-covered night in Russia, 1916, one name seemed to laugh in the face of death: Grigory Rasputin. St. Petersburg, a winter so cold it could freeze breath into glass. The royal palace trembled, not from wind, but from whispers of treason. Russia's nobles, disgusted by Rasputin's influence over the Tsarina and royal politics, had reached their breaking point. The mad monk must die, they agreed. Under the lead of Prince Felix Yusupov, a secret plan was born. That night, they lured Rasputin to the palace under a harmless pretext: a small dinner and a private conversation. But none of them knew that this night would become one of history's most unexplainable legends. According to testimonies and police reports, Rasputin was served cakes and wine laced with cyanide, enough to kill several men. Yet, he sat calmly, smiling, asking for more. He ate the poison as if it were communion wine, wrote Yusupov in his memoir. I watched him trembling, and I knew this was no ordinary man. Did the poison fail, or was his body truly immune to the toxins of the world? Modern historians suggest several theories. The poison may have lost potency in the freezing temperatures, or Rasputin's frequent fasting and alcohol intake may have dulled its effect. But witnesses swore Rasputin's eyes glowed with fury, as if seeing straight into the souls of his killers. He did not die. He looked at me as if he knew exactly what I would do next, Felix Yusupov. Panic erupted. Yusupov grabbed a revolver and shot him in the chest. Rasputin fell motionless. Silence. But when they leaned closer, he moved. Bleeding, crawling, he tried to escape. A second shot struck his back, a third to the head. And yet, even that wasn't the end. They tied his body, wrapped it in a carpet, and threw it into the icy Neva River. Days later, when the body was found, the autopsy shocked the empire. Water was found in his lungs, meaning Rasputin had still been alive when he hit the water. He did not die from poison. He did not die from bullets. He drowned. gasping his final breath beneath the frozen Neva. How could a man survive poison, bullets, and still die only after drowning? Science has tried to explain it, but even a century later, Rasputin's death remains a haunting puzzle of faith, fear, and fascination. Was he truly gifted with supernatural resilience, or merely a victim of exaggerated legend and fear? What we do know is this. After his death, the Russian Empire began to collapse. Tsar Nicholas II abdicated. The revolution erupted like a storm long brewing. As if with Rasputin's final breath, Russia lost its last protector, or perhaps released the curse he left behind. Did Rasputin truly die that night? Or was that the moment he was reborn as an immortal legend? Because in history, there are two kinds of men, those who live in the records and those who never truly die. So tell me, was Rasputin merely a victim of power and fear, or a man who carried secrets between the mortal and the divine? The Curse of the Holy Devil, Rasputin's Prophecy. Some say death is not the end, but a door to something far darker. And for Russia, that door swung open just days after Rasputin's body disappeared beneath the frozen Neva River. A few days before his death, Rasputin wrote a letter, as if he already knew his time had come. His handwriting trembled, yet his words were sharp and chilling. If I am killed by common men, Russia will stand. But if I am killed by nobles, blood will drown the royal family. The letter was sent to Tsar Nicholas II and Tsarina Alexandra, dismissed as the ramblings of a mystic losing his sanity. But 3 months later, the prophecy came true. In early 1917, revolution erupted. Russia burned with hunger, war, and fury. The Tsar, once the most powerful man on earth, was forced to abdicate. And in a quiet basement in Yekaterinburg, the Romanov family was executed by Bolshevik soldiers. They were slaughtered without mercy, as if Russia was collecting a debt of blood for Rasputin's death. Coincidence? Or a curse that finally demanded its price? Historians argue Rasputin wasn't a prophet, but a man who could read the tides of human hatred. He knew the monarchy was rotting from within, and by writing his prophecy, he wasn't foretelling history, he was scripting it. Yet to the Russian people, his words felt too precise to be mere chance. He saw what no mortal should see, said an old monk from Siberia. Rasputin knew that royal blood would wash away his own. When Rasputin's corpse was recovered from the Neva, it was ordered burned to prevent his followers from worshipping him as a saint. But eyewitnesses whispered something horrifying. As the flames began to consume the body, Rasputin moved. His frame arched upward, his face twisted in agony or defiance. Guards screamed and fled as the pyre roared higher. No official report confirmed it, but the legend spread faster than the fire itself. Rasputin refused to die, even in the flames. More than a century later, the name Rasputin still lingers, half history, half haunting. Was he truly gifted with divine vision, or did he simply write his own fate, using faith, fear, and the fragile minds of those who believed in him? Rasputin wasn't just a man. He was a symbol, of power entwined with faith, and of the destruction that follows when the two become one. His body may have sunk beneath the frozen river, but his shadow still prowls through Russia's history. From the frozen villages of Siberia to the marble halls of the czars, from holy prayers to whispered curses, Rasputin lives on. Not in body, but in the collective fear of mankind, in our terror of what we cannot explain. So tell me, did Rasputin truly see the future, or did he simply become the final act in the play of destiny he wrote himself? In the end, every empire fears one thing, not death, but the man who refuses to die.